Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hi friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to speak with one of the best distribution advisors in the business, Mike Marks, managing partner of Indian River Consulting Group. Mike has been a leader in the advisory business for over 30 years. He's always been a great supporter of me and my distribution practice. In our discussion, we talk about challenges related to COVID, positioning for acquisition opportunities, and our thoughts on where the distribution business is headed in the future. It's always fun catching up with Mike, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. All right, Mike. Hey, welcome to Distribution Talk. Always a pleasure to see your face.
It's good to see you. It's last time you and I were together was back in March when we could fly on airplanes.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, I just, as I was sharing with you earlier, that is the last time I have been on an airplane. It's the goofiest experience. I've been now flying for on the consulting side, about 17 years now. And it was every other week. And I'm thinking, man, this is crazy now.
Well, yeah, the whole thing's nuts. I ended up once, counting that airlines have gone bankrupt, I've got 11 million frequent flyer miles and change. and it just came to a dead stop, which frankly doesn't disappoint me at all. I'm kind of like where you're at.
I know. I just, and I moved to a pretty nice area last year. And I'm really liking it here. I'm like really happy here. I don't miss the little airport. It's a nice little airport, but I don't miss it. Oh, it'll be interesting. I don't even think I'm going to be flying this year. I really don't think that any of these events are going to come back up.
Oh, the group event. I think everybody's betting on it. The latest one is Hardy, and they're planning to do a meeting in December. If the stars all align and this magically goes away, like our president says it will, then they'll probably make it. But I'm somewhat skeptical.
I am very skeptical. In fact, I talked with their education manager, and she and I both agree it's not going to happen. It's wishful thinking, but it's just not going to happen.
Yeah,
so
that's the deal, man.
Now, how long have you been in the consulting side of the business here?
Since 1987.
That is a bit. You've seen the good, bad, and the ugly out there. So what were you doing before that? If you wouldn't mind giving us a little history lesson, and why distribution? Why did you go down that route?
I started off in working with the military on weapon deployment, and I won't say anything more about that.
Sure.
And then I left and went into the distribution business, getting a job, just getting out of that. So I've basically been a distributor geek my whole life, other than that early part that I can't talk about. It was consumer products, and then very rapidly I got into automotive products and did a short tour as a manufacturer's rep as well, setting up warehouse distributors and all the normal deal. And then I had a baby. And then I had to go get a real job. And, well, you know what I'm saying. Yeah. So anyway, I ended up starting off as a corporate training guy for Ducommon, where I was in charge of all the sales training for, a bunch of companies. And they gave me a sales territory that was every account that was $100,000 a year or more that went to zero. In other words, we screwed up.
Right.
And then so I was a black belt at suck up behavior and begging. So I just kind of worked that back. Then I ended up leaving, and long story short, ended up running an electronic component distributor, and it was a business development guy for a company in the UK called Lex Service. So they're called roll-ups now, but back then they were LBOs, leverage buyouts.
Sure.
And so I bought a bunch of companies in the States, just under $1 billion worth of companies, but that was a bunch of companies because they were much smaller then. And then I decided that I was done with the travel because I woke up in a hotel and couldn't remember where I was and had to find the phone book to see what city, and I was in London. And so I said, enough was enough. Right. So I actually semi-retired in 1987. And I was going to go finish my PhD and actually become a professor at the local university, Florida Institute of Technology. I've never made that cut, but I am on the board. So 11 weeks after that happened, I ended up with a divorce, ended up broke because it was all part of the deal, and had to do something for a living. So I decided to hang up a shingle. And my partner he was one of the founders of the big search firms. And whenever we'd buy a company, the old thing, it was always, once you've been a king, it's very hard to be a prince. And so I would typically take that person out, and he was my search guy. Like the Canadian Mounties, he'd always get me a guy, get me the right guy. And he was fed up with living in LA. And I said, well, look, let's hang on a shingle and we'll call it Roger and Mike's Excellent Consulting Company. You can tell what.
Perfect. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And when you peeked out the window, you could see the Indian River. So we finally, at the last minute, decided to call it Indian River Consulting. And that was 1987.
Wow. Wow. No, that's fascinating. I mean, it's kind of funny how, oh, you look at these ways people get into business and this, and that was part of my journey was, leaving my family business saying, I think I want to try something different and I want to try it. And I think sometimes, at least for me, I was shocked when I started working in the consulting side. I did know a couple things and I'd learned a couple things over the years. And wow, maybe I do know a couple of things, and people actually listened and they nodded their head and said, wow, good idea. And I thought, okay, all right, maybe this will work out. So
Well, and most coming up through the ranks, if you will,
yeah,
because I had the sales guy and branch manager and kind of doing that normal sales thing. And you don't know what, because it's all about execution. There's a lot of guys. What's the old joke that those that can't do teach and those that can't teach consult, right? And
right,
so
right. Oh
because
yeah,
because I spent so much time sort of trying to clean up cow pies that
yeah,
all of a sudden you're giving advice and you have to just go, well, no, you're the problem. I'm sorry, you're my client, but which is more important? Do you want to be successful or do you want to be right? Because they're in
yeah,
conflict now. One thing led to another, and here we are. I got old, lost my
yeah.
hair, got fat. And
God, I tell you, that is one of the more interesting situations you wind up in is you're looking at they ask you to come in and evaluate a company and hey, check out all these departments, talk to my managers and tell me what's going on here. What's the problem? And then you come
yeah,
to the conclusion, you're the problem. This head of the organization is the problem. And it's a tough conversation. And then you're like, well, but I get to get on a plane and go home. So I think I'm going to have to, it's my responsibility to say that.
well, have you ever heard the old consulting is a seagull mission? You fly in, dump a load of crap, and leave.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. It's like
But
seagull
the
management. Yeah.
the thing you're talking about, though, even though it's like a shock to the CEO, it's
Mhm.
blindingly obvious to everybody else in the
Oh,
organization.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Everybody knows. And I remember years ago, this is before I got into the consulting side, I was, still in the family business and I took one of those 360-degree
evaluations, yeah.
evaluations and that's everybody got to take a shot. And that's an eye-opening experience right there. I mean, and I think honestly, it's probably one of the best things that I did over the years. Decided to be vulnerable and all right, go ahead and let me know what's going on. And it wasn't pretty always as well. They're definitely,
It
you
never
know,
is. Yeah.
right. I'm the second generationer, a son of boss, and and they were not, especially with their names not on it. Oh, they weren't going to hold back, and so they let me know what was going on, and I do appreciate that today. And I think
Not
that
so much at the time.
not so much at the time. I was a little stung there, and I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah, just remember, denial is more than a river in Egypt.
Yes, absolutely. I was very blissfully ignorant and yeah, I was very happy. But no, I think it was one of the best things I did. And I think that would be a huge step in the right direction for some of these companies.
Well, but I mean, to me, a lot of lifestyle distributors, which is like 320,000 or 360,000 in the US,
Right.
they started that because they had a problem with authority. I
Right.
mean, that's how I ended up in the consulting business. I just got
Yep.
tired, needed to go do something. And
Yep.
and that to me is why the old tech groups and the Vistage groups and putting a real board of directors, we all need to be taken to the woodshed occasionally,
Yep.
even if you own the company. And fortunately for me, my girlfriend takes care of that for me. And
No, yeah.
I get all my
Good.
adjustments.
Yeah, there you go. It's funny you mentioned those two. When I mentioned tech groups, a lot of people don't know what that is anymore.
Well, they're gone. They're basically gone, other than an individual, because Vistage is what grew out of the tech group when the tech
Yeah.
group thing pulled it
Yeah.
up. And there's still some really sharp tech chairs that are out there, and they'll
Yeah.
go and do what they're doing. They just didn't want to sign into the franchise thing.
Interesting. Yeah, Vistage. I just thought it was a name change, actually, what is what I thought it was. But yeah, that's been an interesting model. But as you said, the folks that they do need that outside assistance, outside observation,
Yeah.
and things like that, and then some of them are still not interested in that kind of a feedback, and so they're just gonna keep running
Well,
the milking this cow.
that's why they drop out. And the thing is, it's good to be king. Kiss my ring, don't get my finger wet. And I'm
That's right.
earning a lifestyle return. And all our board meeting is Thanksgiving dinner. It all
Yeah,
works.
yeah.
So,
Oh, those were miserable with the family members. Oh, that was a miserable experience. I mean, I finally started liking my family again when I got into consulting.
well, I could say you stop being a victim.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, that was it. I and my wife actually decided, okay, I will stay married to you after this point now.
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about we've gone into this the pandemic, and We've gotten very involved with, looked at cost cutting, and actually, frankly, those folks who did not do any forward thinking are still in a little bit of hurt right now. I mean, they're a little bit of pain, but yeah, rather than dwell on the backstory and things that you didn't do, what can we do going forward? I mean, especially around the sales force, which rightly is one of the most expensive pieces of any distribution organization. So where can we go forward from here? I mean, I think, we need to have some positive direction here, positive momentum.
Well, it's not down for everybody. I mean, I had a floral distributor that he said if it wasn't for grocery stores, I would have had to close the doors. Yeah. But I mean, and at the beginning, they're killing all the flowers because the logistics broke down. But, if you look at a lot of people serving construction trades, especially the service, they're doing fine. And the distributors that serve them are doing fine. There's some people that are up and down, and we publish a weekly revenue index, a pandemic index.
I saw that, yeah.
And we've got a couple $2 billion worth of total revenue. And so what we did with the distributors is we said, and this is an important part, you'll like this, Jason, because this sort of fits the math stuff that you and I talk about all the time. We told them to break down 2019 by week and tell us what your sales are this week as a percentage of the same accounting week in 2019. So in April, we had these precipitous declines. Everybody closed down, and it came back. We've actually had 1 week that was slightly positive, where it was like 1% up from 2019. They're talking about we got sort of a dead cat bounce, as the market's coming back, and then we still have all the other issues. So it's never going to go back to what it was in January. So, but there are still, we're involved right now. We have 3 distributors that are actively involved making acquisitions, which is probably worth talking a little bit about.
Sure, absolutely.
There are a whole bunch of people, as you know, Tom Gale, the sales GPS, which is how do you change the role of the field salesperson? That would typically have, 50 or 100 people would show up to the annual conference, which is virtual, by the way.
Right.
But it's like doubled now because people are saying when they close this whole thing down, it's never going to go back to the way it was. And I need to make some changes to my field sales organization. I mean, we had a guy got rid of a $600,000 a year salesman that sold to contractors. And the sales guy, obviously, with 2 big chips in his shoulder and everything. But when they're going through trying to right size the business, because a lot of people have had to do structural layoffs and things, they go out and talk to the customer. One customer was like $4 million all by themselves. And they go out and talk to the customer about, well, what can we do to reduce, we got to figure out how to do it. And they say, well, get me another salesman. I don't even like this guy that's calling. And they said, well, how about if we give you a full-time concierge that does nothing except do anything you want, including going to Starbucks for coffee? The contractor said, I love you guys. They cut the big buck guy go. The concierge is happy. Customer's happy. Here's the difference. Lifestyle businesses are very good at reacting quickly to threats or opportunities. They brag about, we don't have to have consultants and we don't have to have meetings and PowerPoints to get approval. We can ready, fire, aim. And so this reacting works really well. And most lifestyle distributors are very good at reacting. What we're talking about here is intention. You're moving with intention. You're saying, I'm going to do something. I'm not reacting. I think this is going to happen. So let's put ourselves in place so we're ready. That's what a lot of the sales retransformation stuff's going on now. And then the acquisition stuff, it's really, I cannot tell you how many people have said, I wish I'd sold my company back in 2019. The multiples were lofty. It was dumb and dumber. And we're not going to see that again for probably another 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
The window's gone. So we've got one company that told the guy, look, I'll buy your company, and we'll index it off what you had in 2019, but I'm not going to pay you that because obviously you're doing layoffs. Everything's getting smaller. Right. You had no earnings. I'll pay you a nice multiple, but a multiple of 0 is 0. So this was really interesting. So what they said is they say, well, we'll take this notional number. Let's just, for the sake of discussion, say it was a $2 million of adjusted EBITDA. They're going to buy it for 5 times for $10 million. Okay. So they said, what we'll do is we'll give you one layer of EBITDA that will give you $2 million, and the others we'll put and base it on your 2021 EBITDA. If you achieve these numbers, we'll pay you. You can come out great, and if you don't, then we're not going to pay you. So automatically, it's very hard for it not to be accretive to the acquiring distributor. And it also gives the one that was scared to death that maybe we're not big enough to make it. And there's a lot of stuff like that. It gives them some shelter in terms of where they want to go. So there's a lot of creativity you're starting to see, even though the capital markets are a little squishy right now. And just it's uncertainty. There's still plenty of money, obviously. It's not like 2008 and 9, but everybody's trying to figure out what the rules are because the goalposts keep changing.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And I think you're right. Creativity is king right now. And this is kind of fun. I think, and that's really great, brings up a great point because I know that there are several distributors that I've talked to over the years, and they tend to be now second generationers, got a little cash in the business, they got some money in there. And they're trying to figure out how to go acquire these companies, but they don't want to pay off of EBITDA. They don't want to pay these multiples that they've seen in the past. And so I think, no, that's a great point that there is the opportunity to be creative around some of them because let's face it, there's still a lot of owners that don't have a transition plan. They've got nobody to pass this on to, and they haven't really thought about it except thinking, I know there's a private equity firm that's going to bail me out. And they're not.
Not so much. I mean, there's a lot of zombie funds that are out there now where they paid so much money for these things. It's like my partner Mike Emerson came up with the classic line. He said it's really easy to make a lot of money in an Excel spreadsheet. It's a lot harder in the real world. And
Very true.
These guys put these lofty assumptions about all this stuff, and then they do the deal, and then it doesn't work, and they got to figure out which leg to cut off.
Right.
And so yeah, people are being much more cautious now. Yeah, it's a complex process, but look at it this way. What's happening is a lot of the folks that basically just did the turtle strategy, I'm just going to cut costs, hunker down, and wait for it to go back. They're going to be waiting for a really, really long time. And as a consequence, if you don't size the company right so that you can at least have positive cash flow going forward, you're going to start to lose your best employees, not the worst, right? Because they're going to lose confidence. Right. And you start to do these across the board pay cuts. And Mary says, well, look, I've been busting my butt and these other guys are coasting. Why am I taking the cut? So Mary bails, and Mary's the only talent they had. Right. You're starting to see a lot more of this right now. I talked to a guy this morning in the electrical business, serving the contractor side. And he's been just like a machine upgrading his staff, right? If they can't do what they need to do, because part of this requires some innovation from the salespeople, contactless, how do you do web? And he has made three, since this whole thing started, has done 3 things that have actually worked out a whole lot better for him, where he's really upgraded his talent. So people have to ask, are you playing the game to win, or are you playing it not to lose? And the ones that are playing it not to lose, to me, are going to end up being the targets in all this. And it won't really happen until fourth quarter this year, and then through 2021.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you say that because, again, right now it doesn't feel like that 2009 mentality. It doesn't feel like that same kind of bloodletting. But the best is yet to come, I guess. We've got a little something coming on, as you said. Maybe later this year in the fourth quarter, we'll start seeing it. Maybe even in the beginning of 2021.
There's a really good insight. None of it from the media in the U.S. I mean, it's all about drama and getting people all spun up, and let's argue about masks with strangers on Facebook. I mean, what could go wrong? Yeah. But I have been, in terms of the advice we're giving clients in terms of where things are going, we're drawing extensively from the Economist magazine, the Financial Times, and actually McKinsey & Company, the big consulting company, has done. Yeah. I think they are head and shoulders above Bain and Accenture and all these other guys in terms of really thinking it through. They put a lot of resources in, and they're making it readily available to anybody. So it's and the running deal there, the Economist magazine, unless things get worse, they say the U.S. will be back to 90% in terms of GDP, be back to 90% of where we were by the end of the year, 19, and it'll be the first quarter of 2022 before we're back to 100%. So most of the smart money is working on that kind of timeline. What we tell people is, look, plan for that long timeline. Plan for this. It's going to be a long winter. There's going to be goofy things happening. Yeah. Design your business so you can go through that. If it turns out it comes back better, there's no downside for you. But if you assume it's going to come back soon and it doesn't.
Right, because you've bet on something that just isn't possible. I remember actually there was a slide deck that you did. Oh, it's probably been a few months ago, but It was with the McKenzie curves, some of the
Mhm.
curves that they had, and there was like an
Yeah, the
A1.
9 scenarios. Yeah.
Yeah, the A1 that took up A1 ain't happening. I mean, that just ain't happening.
Well,
The one.
they just updated it 2 days ago,
Oh,
and
okay.
even though A1 was a majority, it's still a majority, but it's
Okay.
moved over to B3. So, which is the one that says instead of being sort of a V with sort of a side thing, it's
Right.
looking a lot more like just it goes down, and we just wander along at the bottom for a long time.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
sentiment is moving, and it's much stronger in the U.S. because we've completely lost control at this point.
Right.
And there's some goofy things happening in India and Brazil and the rest of it, but you can get used to anything. I stayed married to a mean woman for 11 years. She can get used to anything.
I think it's interesting, so if you look at that potential, the companies that, or even the salespeople for that matter, that say that I'm just going to wait till it comes back, they're in trouble. I mean, they're just playing ostrich. It's just not going to happen. And to your point earlier about doing like 10% pay cuts across the board and all that kind of stuff, sometime an owner of an organization has to have the intestinal fortitude to let some people go that just aren't going to make it. I tell you, Mike, and I'm sure you've heard these folks before that will brag that they've never had a layoff or they've never had to let people go and things, going through these rough financial times, and they stopped taking a paycheck because it was the right thing to do. All of this. And at one point I thought it was admirable. And now I think that's a poor choice. You've just really put yourself in a bad position when you cannot make that tough decision.
Can I tell you a lifeboat story?
Yeah, please.
The true story. And I've used it teaching an ethics class. In World War I, towards the end of the deal, they were using these transport ships that were carrying passengers, and they're all worn down, not maintained. And this is right before the war ended. Got torpedoed by a U-boat. And what ended up happening is everybody had to abandon ship. And the problem with abandoning ship is that they had barely enough lifeboats, but the motors weren't maintained, and they were in heavy seas, North Atlantic. And so the coxswain, which is basically the cabin steward, becomes the captain of the lifeboat. That's the way it works. So this one guy's in the lifeboat. They're all overloaded because they couldn't get them all off. He had to have people in the water for a while, and they had to row to keep the bow of the boat into the waves. Sorry, it's a long setup, but here's what happened. He had the women and children get over the side and hold on, saying we were going to change because he knew he needed every able-bodied man because they knew they weren't going to get rescued till in the morning. And if they couldn't row like that all night long, they would all perish. When the rescue ship arrived in the morning, it was the only lifeboat that was left. And because they were able to do it, right. He was sentenced to life in prison for murder, right? Because he was trying to save the most lives he could instead of the order. And so I would set that up for a bunch of undergraduates, and you can imagine them, they go crazy with it.
Yeah.
But he was playing the game to win instead of playing it not to lose. And sometimes, you can talk about being noble, but we have had it so good in Western society for so long that we've lost our ability to deal with adversity. And people just, if you just look at all the pain people had to go through to survive in the past, and now how do we survive? You wear a mask and stay at home. Oh my God, I can't do this. I need a therapist,
Right.
I mean,
right.
Lost.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go on a rant on you.
Mike, it is interesting. Is this kind of like doing a top ranking type of exercise? Is that kind of the same concept here when you start looking at those team members?
I'm not a real big fan of that in terms of the top ranking, because the fatal flaw in the whole thing is that A player managers hire A players and B players. C player managers don't hire A and B because they make them look bad. So if you're doing top ranking, my issue has always been with the rankers, because it's great in theory, but in terms of integrity and honor, everybody ducks the tough conversation. So a different way of looking at it, maybe, and just, to me, we're in extraordinary times, and I'm asking people to step up. And if I'm the leader in a company, I tell everybody, I don't know what's going on. If I was smart, I'd be rich. We're all just trying to figure it out. We got to take care of our customers. We got to meet the requirements of our suppliers. And I'm asking everybody to step up. And a lot of people, this is where it comes down to, they either are unwilling to, because it's all about me. What are you going to do for me?
Right.
Or they're unable. And so to me, when you start talking about these kinds of things, the one guy I told you about in electrical that's been upgrading all the salespeople, he asked people to step up, and he said, if somebody can't do it and they're trying and they're busting their butt, I'll put a lot of energy in to help that person be successful. But if somebody's sitting back with their arms folded, going, well, if you're asking me to do more, you should give me a raise. So but when you look at all this, some people, they just have jobs and they just want to have jobs, and loyalty is a substitute for competence. And they don't really care. And that lifestyle owner that brags, I've never had a layoff, you should always carry your wounded because it makes financial sense. But some companies are still carrying their debt.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Mike, and that's the thing that just it does drive me crazy when I hear that. I just,
and
and the friend.
how often do you hear it though? You hear it all the time, don't you?
All the time, especially, with trade associations that I grew up in,
Yeah.
and these are friends, and
Yeah.
and I like these folks, but oh God, I wouldn't go into business with them. There's no way, hey, we've made that mistake before. It's funny, years and years ago, my family business, we acquired a company, and we had been friends, with the owner of the company and his wife, and we'd see them twice a year at these meetings. Tell you something, people can look smart twice a year, really smart twice a year, and then you live with them, and it's like, what did I get myself into? But yeah, it just disappoints me sometimes, because I look at their companies and I think you've now grown just by, virtue of staying
A
around for
lot.
long. Yeah, I mean, now they're 120 people and they're still running it this way. And I'm thinking, oh, you have really done a disservice to those families, that are depending on you. It's disappointing, and I think the successful companies I've seen over the years, they've had to go through, some severe bloodletting, it's reduced by 30, 40% of the staff, and not a fun day, but it's a
No.
necessary day. Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
and markets change, and what worked before will not work in the future. And everybody that spends their time trying to do the same things better instead of doing new things, at some point, even if it's glacial, they get completely misaligned with the market.
Yeah.
So it creates acquisition targets for the others.
Absolutely. And I think that, again, I love when I see, as maybe a smaller entity getting hungry, saying, oh, look, there's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity here. Rather than wallowing in maybe the pain of what's going on in certain areas of their company, they always have their eyes, have their eyes up. They're not looking down at the floor. They're looking up at the horizon. They're saying, I think there's an opportunity here and there's an opportunity. And frankly, those are the coaching calls I love. I love, like, hey, let's go looking. Doesn't hurt to ask. We can always ask and they can say no. But they know that you're interested.
Peter Drucker, the management guru, said you should always focus on opportunities and not problems. And he said that means you should always be focusing on the revenue stream with two exceptions. If your customer is a government or if you're in a not-for-profit, you can focus on something different. But if you're for-profit, it's about growth and providing value to customers. And with what you were just saying, one of my favorite lines of his, he said, managers that take risks typically make two mistakes every year. And he said, managers that don't take risks typically make two mistakes every year. So you're going to make mistakes anyway.
No,
just get out and go do something. At least feel like I got something on the scoreboard, because the employees want to work for somebody that's going places. They want to feel that they're working for a company that they can win. The leadership's going to show here. I mean, one thing that has been, to me, a really big positive in this, and it's gotten like no coverage, and we've actually talked about this, would probably be an interesting thing really to go out and do a bit of research on, is, everybody talks about salespeople being these old middle-aged white curmudgeons, and we got to get the young guys and do the rest of it. These old guys, the amount of creativity that distribution field salespeople have demonstrated since March is phenomenal. Just the whole absolute out-of-the-box thinking to solve customers' problems. And I mean, it makes you, well, again, speaking as an old guy, I mean, there is some redeeming social value.
Right. Warms your heart.
Well, but because they have that experience and they had the trust of their customers, they could do some very different things and people would let them. And that's where all these new practices are coming out. I think that'd be a great book for somebody just to go through and let's pull it all together in one place, because it's happening in every single industry. But I'm too busy trying to make money right now that I don't have the time to go write the book.
Go write books. Yeah.
Well, Jason, I think it'd be great for you. You haven't written a book in a while.
Sounds like a great idea. Yeah, I'd love to do that. It is interesting. I had a facilitation group that I do, with outside sales managers. And I've loved listening to them. And it's not the youngest in my group that are coming up with some really interesting ideas and things that they've They've tried. No, it's the veterans that are. There are some veterans, of course, they're crossing their arms and sitting back,
Yeah,
like, well, I'm going to wait till this turns around. But then there's the other ones that are no, hey, let's go try this, let's go try that, and
that's the
they were the
majority.
first ones. Yeah,
That's the majority.
they were the
And
first
they're just
ones.
making fun of them.
They were the first ones to jump on Zoom and try this, and hey, let's do. Hey, why don't we do some text to order things? Why don't we try some like interesting things out there? And that's what I love seeing. I love those guys. Those are the fun ones.
Playing with multiple channels, but the bulk of their business, this we're entering, I think, after this, a really golden age for distribution.
I would agree with you. And I thought about that this morning. I was really thinking about, the businesses that are getting decimated, retail, restaurants. I mean, oh my God, I'd not want to be in the restaurant business. I mean, I just, that terrifies me. But big retail, those types of things, boutique folks, I think they're going to be okay and they're going to be creative and inventive. I still would not want to be a landlord to them, but,
No.
they are going to be creative and inventive. But warehouses, distribution, absolutely.
One small sample, because it's Florida and it's 95 degrees and 100% humidity.
Yeah.
My girlfriend and I put on our KN95 mask, a really
Yep.
good one, and we go down to the mall that's air conditioning, and we just do laps in the mall, walking up and
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
And it is amazing to me how many stores aren't there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then just as we started to lock down in Florida again, now the most of the stores have a guard. She's got her hand sanitizer and her thermometer to measure your temperature, and you're not allowed in the store without a mask.
Yep.
So this is Florida. We have more guns than we have masks. And you'll see people standing in line to get in the store, not wearing a mask, and then they put the mask on to get in the store.
Right, right. No, I saw it this weekend. I shake my head. And then
Yeah.
there's the mask shaming people and those types of folks, all of those fun things. So no, it is. It's a kind of a fascinating, new world to look at. But I think you're right. Distribution is really built for this. Now, I guess the big question is how do you get the message out? Because really, I mean, I think one of the big challenges that we've always seen is how do we attract new talent to the distribution? Young people coming out of school or even out of high school coming in. This is a very attractive way to make a living. And frankly, you and I that has been our world, but we've got a PR problem. We've not ever been able to sell this to that group. And I'm not sure why.
Well, it's still a giant secret. And I mean, one of the early plays that I thought was actually probably one of the better done is the effort that was started by the power transmission distributors in terms of recruiting people. And then they pulled some of the other associations in, but it's purely a scale thing, and people don't learn about it in school. I mean, I'm on the board at FIT, and as we work in the business school, it's only because I'm on the board people are starting to talk about wholesale distribution, I think, and it's just because they don't want to get me mad. But students, I mean, wait, what do you mean they make that much money?
Right, right. And it's stable, and you rarely get fired if you just do the work. If you just, go.
Well, the other thing that's really interesting, if you look at all these giant mask shortages we had back in April, there is a very established channel, the safety distributors and all the PPE guys and trade associations, and they had global sourcing on all this stuff. And when all the government guys and everybody decided they had to go find all these things, they weren't bright enough to go to the distributors.
Right.
And so now you have all these exposés that we spent, $100 million on some guy that nobody can find now and all this other stuff. But it's really interesting how it's kind of come back, at least in Washington, D.C., that everybody goes, well, I guess we stepped on our foot, and that kind of hurt. Gee, maybe these guys mean something more. And it's really, I mean, I think 3M has done, and from a leadership point of view and talking about distribution and, remember how the president said you can't support global customers, it all has to come here, and they said not so much. And the channel, it's strong. We're going to be stronger coming out of this. It's like the weak water buffaloes that get eaten by the lions and the tigers, and the rest of them are going to be pretty tough.
It's interesting, that analogy. I bring that up a lot when I talk to people about trade associations, and you want to stay in the middle. Because it's the weak, it's the ones on the peripheral. Those are the ones that are going to get eaten. And that's one of the things, when I talk to people, when they're talking about a trade association or they're a part of a trade association, but they don't go to the meetings. And I'm like, guys, you are missing the boat here. I'm a huge fan of these associations, some better than others. I mean, but huge fan of by staying in the middle of it. And I was very involved in mine, and it served me very, very well. And those I know that have served on the boards and been involved, you don't see them going out of business unless they do it by choice.
Well, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's the best. It's one of the best mechanisms for you to learn best practices in your specific industry.
Yeah.
And I mean, the comment, and I've heard it for 30 years since I've been doing this, is that what if you serve in a committee, people always feel they get more out of the relationship than they put in. So if you put in a lot, you get back even more.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, I spent 5 years on my trade association board and was very involved with that. And absolutely, the rewards have been well over tenfold. So I'm
Yeah.
absolutely thrilled with it. Speaking of this, and I know we're kind of running long on time here, but that's okay. People ask me all the time, would you ever go back to being a distributor? Would you ever go back to working for a distributor or being involved with one? And I'm not certain that I would because I do kind of like my schedule and I like the way that I get to run that. And frankly, I have a little ornery streak. I have a difficulty with authority, as you said, as you mentioned. But if you were to go back into a vertical market, which one would you choose?
And by the way, at the ripe old age of 71, I might invest in one, but I'm not going to go start one and operate. Okay? But the very first thing I would do is I would say, what country do I want to do it in? And if I was younger, I would be in distribution. I would probably be somewhere in Asia because just the structural growth. You want to go where the wind's going to be at your back in terms of growth.
Yeah.
And the U.S. is kind of like where the U.K. was at the end of the 1800s. And anyway, that's a different topic and conversation that I could wax eloquently on.
Yes.
But I would take a look at, there's so many of them that have growth, and there's facets of the construction trade that are wonderful, and there's the industrial market. Here's what I would do. I would say B2B. I would design the company with the B2C customer digital experience. I would use my salespeople offensively. They do market making, not market serving.
Okay.
And I'd have my inside and everything else to the customer. It's just no friction, just as my kids used to say, slicker than whale snot.
There
right?
you go.
And it's just take all the paint out of it, and everybody has a good time.
Yeah.
So I love the business. I mean, you and I have had a blessed life. I feel somebody sprinkled pixie dust on me a long time ago.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't be happier as well. And I think you just described actually. People ask me would I go back in, and there are a couple vertical markets that actually fit a lot of what you just said. I kind of look at like beauty, and I'm just going to say it because I know I'm going to alienate some of my clients, and that's I get in trouble for that all the time. But beauty supply, that is an interesting.
We did a bunch of work in that and knew a lot of the people back in the day. And so people laugh at beauty supplies, but let's say that the typical margin's a little over 50% gross margin.
Absolutely.
The receivables are 13 days because that's how long it takes to get paid in cash from UPS COD. And you typically, the lines are exclusive. I can have Paul Mitchell, Nexus, Aveda, Redken, any of these guys. And so I have salespeople that run around and call on salons. And the other interesting thing in our business that they don't understand is that outside sales and beauty distribution reports to inside sales. It's the whole opposite thing. So the inside person calls 10 customers, said, my outside guy's going to be there tomorrow. You want him to bring anything? And then they called the 10 customers that he was at yesterday saying, we're ready to ship your order. Do you want anything else to add on? It's a beautiful machine, and all they're sitting there at operating margins that most of these people would consider a drug-induced fantasy in our industrial business.
Oh yeah, exactly. The same reasons right there, Mike. I tell you.
And I remember one of the famous guys in it that was actually really, really an interesting person, a guy named John Paul Joria, who ended up owning Paul Mitchell's systems but I remember him saying, he's holding it up and because they were very proud of the fact that they had scientists that do the fragrance. And he said, I hold this up. Look at this product. There's two things you need to know about it. As soon as they get this product, the first thing they start doing with it is pouring it down the drain. And the second thing is they decide how good it is because they unscrew it and they smell, oh, this is good stuff, right? And it's called attribute generalization analysis. And he goes, we're selling hope in a bottle, and it's a wonderful thing to sell. So sorry, you got me going.
No,
you're very good at yanking my strings.
I know. I gotta be careful of that, my friend. So. Well, anyway, hey, Mike, it's been a pleasure, and gosh, I look forward. Hopefully we get to see each other in March. Hopefully that the University of Innovative Distribution gets to go, albeit a lot smaller. I mean, you saw
Yeah.
that email. I mean, it's really going to be interesting. I wonder if we are going to get to do face to face or something different than that. But
Well, they juggle it around, so they're still planning on doing the meeting.
yeah,
They're doing
yeah,
a backup to do it virtual if they have to. But the hope is by March of next year it can kind of go together. But they are collapsing it down because they're going through all the stuff to get the right social distancing.
yeah.
By the way, wouldn't it be interesting to be a plastics distributor right now? How much clear plexiglass sheets are you selling?
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. That would be another
Right.
fun
Well,
one.
another industry, right? As I mentioned, I got my headphones, so I have to take my hearing aids out.
Yeah.
Well, the hearing aid business is going great because most people that need hearing aids don't get them. When you go to Costco, if you're a guy, they give you a number. Here's your hearing aids, and you're number 7. And you go, what does that mean? That's the years you waited too long before you got it. But what's happening when
Yeah.
people are borderline, they're reading lips, and with masks, all those lip reading is gone. So all of a sudden,
fascinating. Yeah.
the hearing aid purchases are going. I mean, so there's a bunch of weird things everybody's starting to figure out.
That's great. Oh, that's funny. I didn't even put that together. So
Well, it's because you can hear.
I can. Yeah. Yeah. At this point, we'll see what happens tomorrow. But
It gets worse at an accelerating rate, my friend. So
Yeah,
I enjoyed the time. Thanks for having me on. And here's my thing. I hope we can get together at UID again. It'd be fun.
I hope so too. All right, my friend. Well, take care, and thanks again for taking the time.
Take care, buddy.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider hitting that subscribe button. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area on your podcast application or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by Andrea Klunder and Edwin Ruiz at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, The Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.